The book of Philippians is actually a fairly encouraging letter. Paul seems to have a tone throughout it of kind of, continue doing what you're doing. Go deeper in what you're doing. You're doing a good job. I'm hearing good things. I'm encouraged with what I'm hearing. Continue to go in that direction. Continue to seek God. Continue to follow Jesus with all your heart. And there's a piece in here that kind of goes along those lines that I think is going to really help us as we talk about our marriages this morning. So in Philippians 2, starting in verse 1, we're going to read to verse 8. Therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love, being one in spirit and of one mind. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. Now, I should note here there are other translations that do say not looking only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others. Because you recognize we have to take care of ourselves, right? We do have to look after ourselves. And then, in addition to that, we give ourselves away for the sake of others. In relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ, who, being in the very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. So, I'm going to stop right there just for a second, because this kind of sets up the example that Jesus provides. Because Jesus, of anyone that ever walked the earth, of anyone that ever deserved to be served, to be glorified, it was God incarnate, right? It was God in human form. And yet Jesus came, and that's not what he was longing for. That's not what he was trying to achieve or find. He was trying to do the exact opposite. He came to serve us. He came to give himself away for us. So let's continue reading. It says, rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even to death on a cross. The ultimate example, the ultimate sacrifice, that Jesus, who deserved glorification, who deserved to be recognized as the King of Kings, that instead, he came to give us what we did not deserve. Right? He came to give us a fresh start, to give us new life, to give us forgiveness from the mistakes that we've made, the good things we don't do, the bad things we do. That he came and he said, Katie's laughing right now because I said do. Every time. Anyway, the sin in our life, that he came to take that away, right? He came to be the one that would bear that sacrifice, that would take on that punishment, even though he did not deserve it. He didn't do anything of his own accord that would merit him going to the cross. He did it with us in mind. He did it to serve us. So, here we are, left looking at this passage, looking at the example of Christ and this lofty goal of being a servant. And as far as things easier said than done go, this has got to be up there towards the top of the list. Because our human nature is selfish at heart, right? If we're all honest with ourselves, we tend to look out for ourselves. We tend to look at how our relationships with others are going to benefit us. We tend to look at how we can take care of ourselves, how we can get ahead, right? And it really is the Holy Spirit working in us. It's Christ moving in us that causes us to go away from that and serve others selflessly. So it's a very difficult thing to do. And there's a few practical reasons for that we're going to talk about this morning. I'm actually going to have Kalee go ahead and come on up at this time. Because one of those first things that is difficult about it is just that selfishness in us. That desire to receive something in return when we do something for somebody else. So this is my wife, Kalee. We've been married now for 12 years. We have 4 kids, twins that are 5 years old, Declan and Evangeline, and we have a 3-year-old, Henry, and a just turned 1-year-old, Winston. And so it is an adventure at our house. Busy.
Definitely busy.
Very busy. So good right there?
Yeah, I think so.
Good side? Is this your good side?
It's a good
All right,
side.
okay.
Okay.
Awesome. We're set up then. So we want to answer the question just in a practical way, just really so we can kind of talk about it here. Why is it so difficult for us to serve others at times, and especially to do it selflessly, right? And also, why is it that it sometimes seems the most difficult to do that for those that are closest to us, for our spouse, family members, close friends? What is it in us that sometimes has difficulty with that? So I'll let you take it away.
Yes, I am excited to be here this morning. I'm going to use a little bit of transparency. So bear with us today as we kind of poke fun at ourselves, but also just be really honest. So I, by nature, am a hostess. I love hosting people at my house. I love taking care of people. It's something that comes natural to me. And in that, it's because I love people genuinely. I love my kids. I love my friends. I love my family. But there's a part of me that when I serve them, if I'm really being honest with myself, I'm kind of hoping for a little bit of acknowledgement. Maybe a smile, a nod of thank you note, a you're the best for my kids, like pat on the back, ooh, a back rub, like that's like one of my favorite
Yes,
things.
back rubs, foot rubs, hand rubs, I can attest to that. She loves those. Lots of those.
Yes,
Lots.
yes. And as a mom, I see this play out mostly with my kids in observation with me and them. They love to serve and help me. They like to go shopping. They want to clean. They want to vacuum. And sometimes I feel like it's not always with the purest intentions. And that mostly shows when we're baking. When we're pulling up the stool, they're fighting over who gets to help pour the ingredients in, and they know when it's to the point for taste-ins. That's what they call it, taste-ins. And without fail, every single time. Did I do a good job? Did I earn taste-ins? Which, I love taste-ins, so I can't blame them, for sure. But if, from the beginning...
Yeah, if you were to say, Declan, eventually, I'd love your help, but no tastings today. Okay, we're not gonna try the cookies when we're done.
No help. Nobody would be helping. They'd want the end product. But the serving part leading up to that, they no interest at all. Which is crazy to me that 3 and 5-year-olds just have it in them to be selfish. No one has taught them that. Maybe they've observed it a little bit. But as far as reality is, it's in their tiny human DNA to be selfish. We live in a sinful, fallen world, and that is, again, why we need Jesus, why we need to reference the Word, is that we don't have it together. And I can't blame my kids. I can't throw my kids under the bus and have the only story be them. If I think about it, in my relationship with Matt, in our marriage, there's plenty of times where my selfish acts of service go unnoticed, and I am pretty disappointed. Wives, I'm speaking to you just for a moment here. This could really relate to anybody, but this specifically, you've had a long day, the kids have been sick, maybe they've had influenza for like 2 weeks straight, the house is a mess, you've had to run all these errands, go to the doctor, this and back and forth and back and forth. And with a strong cup of coffee in hand, you muscle through like vacuuming, getting the house situated, getting everything organized, and you make your husband's favorite meal. Everything's prepared for him, and he comes home, nothingness, crickets. Exactly this moment right here. This is what I'm experiencing. And it's heartbreaking because in my mind, I think, oh, I've done all these things for him today. I've gone out of my way to do these wonderful things with nothing in return. Which, there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that someone is serving you. But I have to be careful personally that I don't start to put that expectation, those certain responses on my children and on Matt and our relationship, or I miss what Paul is talking about in this verse.
Yeah, it's something that really trying to avoid it becoming habit. Like Kalee said, there's nothing wrong with enjoying recognition when we do things, enjoying affirmation from our spouse or from our family members or close friends. But when that becomes the motive behind why we're doing something, that's when we are really veering away from what Paul is talking about and giving us the example of Jesus here. And even more than that, I find it's something that can play out in our marriage specifically, is that type of mindset, that beginning to expect certain responses or expect certain recognition, expect certain things, and get to a point to where we start keeping score, or I start keeping score, at least. And I don't know if you've done this, either in your head or even worse, sometimes in my heart. I'm keeping a tally of kind of like who's winning, who's doing more for the other person, right? Okay, so I did this for Kalee this week. She messed up. I didn't get angry. Point for me. Something happened here. I chose mercy. Okay, point for me.
Now, are we talking about like just normal interaction? Because, when I was talking earlier about how, I have to be careful with my expectations, I will say that it doesn't happen often that he comes home and he misses things. Not often, but it does happen in seasons where, like football season, for instance, like Monday nights, Thursday nights, Sundays, fantasy football, if you have something planned with your friends, if you have even work stuff that you're
so
going
it doesn't happen very often, but make it sound. So it becomes this
Chalk
score,
one up for me?
this score tally thing, right? Where we begin to keep track of kind of where things are at, who's serving more, who's self-sacrificing more, who's giving more, and it becomes a competition. We're not working together anymore. We're now working against each other. All right? And then what attitude really starts to creep in for me is something happens and I go, that isn't fair. This isn't fair. Right? I've done this, and this, but then when this happened, Kalee didn't do this, and this. How is that fair? That I am doing all of this, and then she doesn't do this. Again, that kind of stuff doesn't happen very often. I don't want to make it sound like I'm, killing it in the competition.
Well, are we talking about games?
Games, if we are talking games, then I am killing it in the competition. We're talking.
Well, there's sometimes we just don't even play a game because if I don't even have a chance,
it's true.
I don't like to play.
If Kalee doesn't think she's going to win, we don't play, so we don't always play games. Because I am doing pretty good in that department. Anyway. We need to tally, we need to go, this isn't fair. This isn't fair that I'm giving so much, I'm not receiving enough in return. But here's the thing, and why, again, we want to reference what Paul is reminding us of in the example of Jesus. And that's that Jesus came and he totally messed the entire game up. He came in and he completely destroyed the scoring system because what was not fair was what he did, right? As far as what someone deserved, what we deserved to get. For our actions, for the way we push God away, the way we turn away from him. What would have been fair was for us to bear the weight of our sin, for us to take on that punishment. But instead, Jesus said, all right, I'm not going to do what's fair. I'm going to do what is out of love. I'm going to do what's out of service. And I will be that sacrifice. I will be the one that bears your sin. I will be the one that takes on that punishment and that discipline. So he completely destroys the scoring system. Because when I'm looking at it, and I start doing the score tally, really my attitude should shift and change, and it just needs to go away. Because like Jesus destroyed it, it goes away. And my goal isn't to keep score and win. My goal is to serve my spouse. It's to serve my wife. Or to serve my family member. To serve my close friend. Now, we do believe in practical steps.
Yeah, part of achieving a healthy marriage and relationships, like Matt said, this is not just in marriage, but in relationships in general. We don't claim to have it figured out. We mentioned we've been married for 12 years, we've got kids. So for us, we're at a point that the way we can serve our family is practical tools put in place so that we can prioritize each other. So for us, that's talking on our calendar. We sit down and we look ahead and talk about what that looks like. You've got Tuesday night, Thursday night basketball. Talk to me about what's happening in the next month for our schedule. What does that look like?
It's a good thing. It's a great practice. This isn't something you're doing in your marriage, speaking really specifically to couples at this point. We would highly advise it, the kind of sitting down, mapping out what the next couple weeks, the next month looks like. And there's a couple great reasons for it. It allows us to be on the same page, to be focused on that team aspect, to have clear expectations for what the next couple weeks are going to look like. But I also find that for me, it's very beneficial when I'm able to look at it and see, like Kalee said, okay, I've got basketball league on Tuesday night and Thursday night, and then I've got an event on Friday night, and then next week, I've got another thing that I need to get on the church on Tuesday night. And it allows me to see, okay, there's several things over the next couple weeks that are going to pull me away from Kalee and the family, and they may be life-giving things for me, right? They may be things that I enjoy. They're going to energize me, and I come home, and I'm feeling great. But they put Kalee maybe in a life-draining situation because she's been at home all day with the kids, and then as she's going to be home all night, she's going to be bedtime alone, all this stuff. And then it becomes important. This is that part of serving, because in competition, we're looking for what's in it for me, how is this going to, but in teamwork, right, working together, looking at the calendar, we're trying to find out, okay, so how can we balance this out? Kalee, what can we do to invest in you now over the next couple weeks?
And instead of the tally mentality for me, you get to go out 2 nights a week this week to play basketball or different things. So that means I get to go out with my friends for 2 nights of the week, or I'm going to go and shop or do, something by myself. Sometimes those are necessary for me to replenish and reboot, but sometimes being intentional about our family schedule is just as important. So doing a family night together with our kids that we choose to play games, or having a date night that we set aside, or even just turning everything off and having a night where we just hang out together and I destroy him in some kind of strategy game is super important for the health of our marriage.
Well played, well played. So, again, it's about working together. It's taking a look at it, finding ways then, so if there are things that are giving life, they're speaking life into me, giving me energy, they're restoring me, then we want to look for ways that we can do that for Kalee as well. Do that for each other together. It's important that we're working together as a team. Now, there is a little caveat to this, because some of you may be sitting in here, and you may be going, man, this sounds great. I really wish I was married to somebody like Kalee that wanted to do something like this, that wanted to work together. I'm here alone this morning because my spouse is at home, because they don't care. I'm here alone because they're not following Jesus. I'm doing this alone. So I don't have somebody that's looking to serve me the way that Jesus does.
We recognize that is a challenge. We recognize that's a challenge. We know even in healthy dynamics and a healthy relationship with our marriage or with others, that's a challenge just in itself. So having Jesus removed from the scenario is even more of a way that you kind of get boxed in. Yeah. Is that what you were saying?
Exactly. It's a difficult place to be. We know, we recognize it. It really forces you into even more of a position where you have to be like Jesus in the relationship, where you have to give of yourself the same way that Paul references that Jesus does, because you're not getting anything in return. And you are sacrificing. Really, you are trying to be an example of Jesus to your spouse. And like Kalee said, even in healthy situations, there are still moments where you are going to have to self-sacrifice. It's not about the balance getting it exactly perfect. It's about serving. I want to put it this way. I wrote this down. That as a team in marriage, Kalee and I are going to work together to have a healthy, balanced relationship. Okay? But as an individual on this team, I'm going to constantly have to bring myself back to this passage, back to this idea and example of Jesus, and look for ways that I can serve my wife. Does that make sense? So as a team, we're going to work together. We're trying to achieve a healthy balance, a good relationship, communication, and all that. But as an individual, as Matt, just by himself on this team, my goal on the team needs to be to look for opportunities to serve Kalee. To look for opportunities to give of myself for Kalee. Really to look for opportunities to be like Jesus for Kalee. And that really leads into kind of where we want to conclude. We talked about a couple of the things that make it difficult for us to serve our family members, our selfishness, that we want something in return. Sometimes the fact that we keep tally, we keep score. But now we want to talk about one of the reasons and big reasons why we want to serve, why following Jesus' example can be such a great thing. And we're going to reference a proverb that many of us in here have probably heard, even if you don't know that it's from Proverbs, the book of Proverbs in the Bible. Proverbs 27, actually, verse 17, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another.
Which is perfect. That is what I was hoping that you were going to talk about this morning. Because as a wife, really, it's my duty to, I just said it now. It's my job, it's my responsibility to really point out the things that Matt does wrong, the ways that he can improve, the things that he can do better. I mean, iron sharpens iron. That's the perfect visual. Like when you have something in your tooth and you're talking to people, I'm not just going to let you stand there looking like a fool. I'm going to point it out and say, you've got something gross in your tooth. When you're in a conversation and you're just like going on and on, I'm going to point out to you like, hey, everybody's checked out. Yeah. When you're talking...
Stop it.
Oh, okay.
I think we probably should have gotten over this a little bit more. I think we should read, so exactly right before that proverb, in verse 15 and 16, we should read and kind of get some context.
Yeah, let's let everybody hear that.
Okay.
Sink in.
So verse 15 says, a quarrelsome wife is like the dripping of a leaky roof in a rainstorm. Restraining her is like restraining the wind or grasping oil with the hand.
And that correlates to what we're talking about because I don't see the correlation.
Oh, man. Okay, so of course Taylor, she's joking there. Set it up. That does tend to be in our minds, right? When we hear the problem, we hear that idea of iron sharpening iron. I know for myself, all growing up, it was very much focused on the friction, focused on the conflict that happens in sharpening, and the fact that I am put into certain friends or family members' lives to be that person that comes in and is able to point out and sharpen them. Hey, this is not okay in your life. You need to do this. Hey, you need to do that. And I remember one day, and I started thinking about it, and I started thinking about, so what is it? You got my tools here. I started thinking about what is it that actually happens when you sharpen a knife. All right, is it like this?
Which even just hearing that is painful.
Hey, you need to work on this.
Hearing that it hurts.
Hey, this is not good in your life. Hey, you need to change this. You need to change that. No, it's a very gentle and a very smooth action, right? It's something that's done with care. The whole point of sharpening a knife is to find the parts of the knife that are broken, right? The parts of the knife that are damaged, the parts of the knife that are hurting, the parts of the knife that need restoration, and then you smooth it over. You take the strong parts of the knife and you smooth them over the weak parts of the knife. And it's my job as Kalee's husband to find the parts of her that are hurting, the parts of her that are broken, the parts of her that need care, and then to serve her and smooth that over. To serve her and sharpen her with the way that I love her, the way that I allow Jesus to work through me. So I hope that that's a visual that you walk away with today when thinking about why do we serve our spouse. It's because really when we serve our spouse, it allows God to change and shape and transform both of us. Right? The same power that Jesus had when he went to the cross that was leading him in his life on earth, and that he had with him when he was thinking about us on the cross, the Holy Spirit, is the same power that we have in us to be a servant, to be transformed in our own life, and to be a part of transforming those that we love. To smooth over those edges, those broken pieces, those parts where they need someone to come along and give encouragement. They need someone to come along and be someone that does something that speaks life into them, that lifts their spirit up so that God can transform them, can make them more into who he created them to be, who he wants them to be.
And it was funny to us that when we were thinking about using iron sharpens iron, we looked up just as context, like what should we be reminding everyone about or ourselves about. It was no coincidence that the leaky, dripping rainstorm was right before iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
We talk about how in this passage they talk about a wife, but really it's anybody. It's your friend, it's a family member, it's a a co-worker. We're talking about how that goes hand in hand in the iron sharpens iron. Yes, we're talking about marriage today, but it also it's so true in relationships that you have. And we teased each other a lot today. We had fun, but really at the heart of it, I want to champion my husband. I want to champion our family. It's important. It's valuable to me. And you'll hear Matt say this often when he speaks, because it's true for our house, that when we align ourselves with who Jesus is and how he wants to make us more like him, that's when the relationships are the strongest. And that's when our family dynamic is really at its best.
Mm-hmm. It's exactly when we are able to really live out what Paul is talking about and follow the example of Jesus. Like Kalee said, when we are aligned with who Jesus is, when we are becoming more like him, that's when we are at our best together. That's when our family dynamic is working the best. And even more importantly, I think at times than that, because that's great. We love the opportunity to experience the kingdom of heaven now, here on earth, when we're able to live out the things that God calls us to, and we're able to follow Jesus. But we also love that hopefully when that's taking place, there's a byproduct, and that's that people around us, our neighbors or other family members or other friends that maybe don't know Jesus, they have an opportunity to see a glimpse of him in our relationship. Right? They have an opportunity to see the kind of servant that Jesus is in just a glimpse of something that Kalee does, or something that I do, or something that happens with our kids. That they have an opportunity to hopefully see Christ at the center of our family, surrounding our family, really the thing that keeps us together, and go, I want that in my life too. I want Jesus at the center of my life as well. Because that should be a goal in our marriages, in our relationships, with our family, with our friends, that those relationships, that they would be a beacon that points people to Jesus. That they would be a way that people can discover, that they can receive a first or a fresh glimpse of Jesus, that they can find and follow Jesus as they interact with us. So we're going to close here in just a moment in prayer, but wanted to give kind of a next step and a practical thing that we can all hopefully walk away from and do this week. And that's to think of one thing, all right? One thing this week. It needs to be something that you're not already doing, all right? But I want you to think of one thing that you can do that is of selfless service to your spouse. Or if you're not married, to a family member or to a close friend. Or I want you to think of one thing that you can do that is going to sharpen them, that's going to speak life into them, that is going to encourage them. Okay? And I want you to put that into practice. And the hope and goal is we'll have kind of like a cartoon snowball effect here. But as that happens, then it'll spur you towards doing some more of that and making that more and more a part of our relationships with each other, with our spouses. All right, so think of that one thing. Maybe even write it down on your connection card before you turn it in today. Here's what I'm going to try and do for my spouse. Maybe you need a little bit more time to think about it. But please make sure this week that you do at least one thing. Think of at least one way that you can serve your spouse or a family member or a friend the way that Christ serves us. All right, let's pray. God, thank you so much. Thank you for being the perfect example, for sacrificing yourself for us so that we could be in relationship with you, so that we could tap into that same transformational power. God, and thank you for the people that you put in our lives, the people that help to shape us and mold us, the people that you use to encourage us, to lift us up, or the people that you want to use us to do that for in their lives. God, we pray very specifically for marriages here at Faith. God, I pray that as we approach the marriage event on Wednesday night, as a lot of couples are thinking about their marriage this week with Valentine's, they're thinking about where their relationship is at. God, I just pray that we would submit those relationships to you, that we would surrender any selfish thoughts and desires that we have in those relationships, and we would turn instead to you and say, God, how do you want me to be in this relationship? God, I want to set aside what I'm expecting, what I want out of this relationship, to ask you what you want me to be like in this relationship and how you want me to treat my spouse. And God, we believe that you're going to strengthen our marriages. We know that that is your heart, that is your expectation, that in following you, that we would allow you to grow our marriages and to strengthen them. And so we're going to believe for that, and we're going to look forward to the things that you're going to do to impact our marriages, to impact our relationships, our family relationships, and our friendships. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Thank you so much for being here. If you have not registered, we have registration in the lobby for the marriage event, or you can head home and do that. We look forward to seeing you on Wednesday night. Have a great week.